Welcome to the Blackburn End Podcast, and it's an all too familiar feeling of disappointment. After a few games of positive form this season, we're back down to earth, and it seems like we're falling further. But let's get into it. So Rovers draw 1-1 at home to Oxford as a Cantwell penalty rescues a point. A trip to the south coast ends in disappointment as Portsmouth take the spoils 2-1. Fans are pointing fingers at everyone and everything, but is it a multitude of issues? We'll get into that. And with all these injuries, we're now losing Arabiosu to the African Cup of Nations. And it's a return to Ewood as Millwall visit on Saturday, but is Ismaël in the last chance saloon? Well, I'm obviously not on my own. I'm with my main man, Mark. Mark, why do we do it to ourselves, mate?
I don't know, Mike. I've had a lovely weekend and we'll get into that. But I'll be honest, it wasn't my main thing I wanted to do this evening. The darts is on. I'd rather be watching that than talking about Blackburn Rovers. However, it always feels better afterwards. We make sense of what is going on. We come out with solutions. It's just up to everyone else to follow them. They've started to do. I mentioned Gardner Hickman. It caused mass debate at Ewood. I say mass debate. There weren't that, well, careful with that, but there weren't many of us at Ewood to discuss the issue. But those that were quite, let's say, either side of the fence. Then he nearly scored early on and everyone was going, oh, see, you shouldn't have said it. Then Ismaël, spoiler alert, I was in the Jack Walker lower for that game, very near to the bench, listening to Ismaël rollicking a few players. He clearly heard my opinion of Gardner Hickman. He listened to the pod, I think, during the first half, took him off, and we've barely seen him since. There you go. Make your own mind up.
I know I was one of those on the fence, and you swayed me more towards your side. You were very convincing, and
thank you.
Yeah, I did message you straight away as soon as he had that shot. I think I said to you, bet your heart was in your mouth then. But then when you see the other angle of it, and it was about 20 yards wide, I don't think you was actually that worried about that shot. But we'll get into that one. I think a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Obviously, we're getting into the Christmas period, and this is where the podcast, we will try to get them out on the regular Tuesday morning, well, Monday evening, Tuesday morning. But because of holidays and stuff like that, they might be a little bit more sporadic. You might get two really quick and then a space. We don't know, but we are going to try and get them out there. The other thing as well is obviously everything going on at Rovers now. There's just side stories and side quests going on around Ewood all the time. And it's very difficult for Mark. I'm going to talk on behalf of you here, Mark, because obviously you've been on the forum. There's certain things that you can talk about, can't talk about, and I don't like putting Mark in a situation where he's got to give an opinion and putting him in the situation. So that's why I don't ask Mark certain questions. And the other thing as well, from my point of view, sometimes I don't actually know where my opinion lies because I'm reading all the news. I go on social media. I see all these things about coalitions and people saying that we should be staying away from Ewood and stuff. I don't know what my opinion is, so I don't want to pass an opinion when I don't know myself. And to be honest, the football is bad enough that we don't want to talk about the side quests anyway. So that's why we just like to stick to football at the moment. Is that all right with you, Mark?
Yeah, stick to football. There's almost a name of a pod in there, isn't there? I know what you mean. It's not that I have any hidden trade secrets. It's I can give an opinion as a personal supporter, I suppose, but being the chair of the forum and not being a member of a group, I sometimes feel I should be a little bit independent and see every side of it, and that kind of fits my nature a little bit. I fall on different sides of things at certain times. You get me after we've had a poor transfer window, and I'm happy to go on the pitch and get a banner out. Then I settle down and think, do you know what? Let's see how it's going. And so it's just a balanced opinion, isn't it, at times? We try and give them, but I think the other problem we've got is the situation changes that much, and we've got 3 games in a week. There will come a time where we have a break from it in terms of internationals and things. Maybe we'll discuss it then. But if there's something people really want us to discuss, we can give our own personal opinions, can't we, and see where we're at. But
yeah. It's just there's so many stories, and like you say, it changes every day. We don't necessarily have our phones with us when we're at work, and you'll go to work with one story, on your social media, and you finish the day and you check your phone, and there's about 40 notifications, all with different stories going in different angles. And the other thing as well is it was something that we tweeted out as well about, our match day posts, anything that we tweet out or put on social media on a match day, just remember, we might have had a drink, so sometimes our opinions do change by the time we've watched 2 or 3 times after, and that's why you're here, is to listen to that opinion. So here we are, Oxford and Portsmouth. They were the games of the week. We came into the week quite positive. I felt like I was quite positive, not necessarily looking forward to games. I mean, I wasn't even sure there would be a game on against Oxford, considering the pitch situation. I was relatively excited going into that game. How was you feeling walking to the ground?
I wasn't excited, I'm going to be honest. Surprised the game was on after the weekend we'd had. Looking at it though, I'm thinking, right, we've nearly beaten Ipswich. We were 1-0 up against Sheffield Wednesday. This has got to be the one now. We've got to get this one over the line. There's kind of been too many times this season where, particularly at home, where we've had nearlies, we've had should have done that, if that, and we're in December. It was at the point where, right, action now. This one has to get over the line because it's starting to get a little bit squeaky bum time.
Yeah, and obviously the game happens, and our opinions suddenly come down to earth, and this was our initial match reaction. Okay, well, a point's a point. I thought the way that game was going, we would just peter out, but actually we went a bit gung-ho there. Ended up being quite captivating and exciting at times. I mean, a bit gutted to going at 1-0 down. I thought it was a pretty shite first half from both teams, to be honest. Wasn't happy with the goal, which we'll break down during the pod. I need to look at that a few times to make a decision on it. But second half, I think we just went for it. I think it was a case of tactics go out the window, make a couple of changes. Great to see Cantwell on, and just absolutely go for it. And like I said, it was captivating to watch. I'm not sure it was enjoyable, but yeah, it's a point. I think we just ran out of time in the end. I thought that we just need that a little bit long, but it's the decision making in the final third. Ali Biasu, he was getting into really good positions and just making the wrong decisions. Marishta did a couple that was the same, but yeah, we'll break it all down. But frustrating night, but I'm just trying to grab onto positives at the moment.
There wasn't really much to say about that game, Mike, because there wasn't really much that happened. Tempo was just all wrong in the first half. The ground was flat, the ground was empty. I thought that Tavares looked way off it, didn't he? I can't believe he played him for 80 minutes. It was an injury waiting to happen. But sure, when you move the ball quicker, create some chances, look a far better team. I thought McLoughlin in the centre of the three made some really good decisions on the ball, missing out Ribeiro, getting it to Cantwell quicker, moving the ball quicker, but there was too many people not doing that. Marishta did it, but I think we saw a lack of quality tonight, a lack of tempo, and you've got to be putting teams like that away. I thought they were really, really poor. They were there for the taking. And it's another game that's ticked by, and another home game that we've not got a result, mate. They're chalking up.
Yeah, I came away trying to find positives. I think that first half, how many times this season have we talked about first halves being terrible for us and not necessarily getting into games? It seems to be quite a trend. Let's start with that first. Do you think it's the way we're being set up? Do you think it's motivation? Do you think it is the fact that only 10,000 were at Ewood? What do you think's causing this first half atrocious football that we're seeing at the moment?
The tempo was just all wrong, wasn't it? I think it is tricky. It's a Tuesday night, which means they've not had quite as long to recover. I think we're seeing players who have played too much football. So Andrego Johnson's the classic example of that for me. he can't. His output's just not what it was. There's still elements of decent play. He's still a better option than Gay, but he's just not got that edge. I think there's some strange decisions by the manager. So you've not really seen Tavares for a long time, and then you're expecting him to hit the ground running for 80 minutes as well, which we saw with Forshaw. You have not really seen Ribeiro. You're expecting him to play wing back, not really played much football. I think there's a mixture of that. And then there's a lack of quality. There are people that need too many touches on the ball. Tavares needs too many touches on the ball because he's not played very much on Tuesday. Some of the other players on the pitch need too many touches because they're not good enough. And that was the problem for me. I thought Pratt looked really, really tired. But like I said in that, I thought McLoughlin was one of the few that was moving the ball quicker, particularly in the second half. And that made a big difference.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up George Pratt, because it's crazy that we've recalled a lad from Chorley and he's now arguably our informed defender, or one of our informed defenders that we're really relying upon. And there's a lot of pressure on him and he's taking it really well. But it just shows the situation we're in. I mean, for me, the opinion on the first half is very similar to you. I think that tactically, whether we're not doing our research on teams and we're actually using the first half to fill games out, rather than actually taking the ball by the horns really quick and saying, right, well, we know exactly what's going to happen, so let's go and do our thing and go straight for it. Doesn't matter whether the crowd's with us or against us, let's trust ourselves. And that does come down to the manager. And believe me, we're going to get into the manager later on. It could be that. But I feel like we're wasting a lot of time in games, especially at Ewood in them first halves. And it's got to be to do with preparation, because I'm coming away thinking my notes are pretty sparse for first halves. And then second half, it's just like my pen's on fire. I'm just constantly writing. And that's why I think I came away from the game feeling relatively positive, because it did feel like the tactics went out the window and it was just like, go for it. Like, let's just try and get the ball into that final third. And that's when I did get like I say, it was captivating, because I felt like it was going to go our way. I felt like there was going to be an opportunity. It was going to fall and we was going to get that look we needed. Ewood was going to celebrate and we was going to be back where we needed to be, because we seemed to have the momentum, in my opinion. But I mean, we had 16 shots to their 6. We should be making more of these opportunities, and that final third was really frustrating. And Ali Biosu, loved the lad. I think he's been great. But in that final third, his decision making was pretty poor.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly nipping back to the first bit. I don't know if it's a tactical thing whereby they are unaware of the opposition. Maybe they've not had time to work on it because of the gap between games. Or maybe he's looking at the game and saying, you can't perform at that output I need you to do for that length of time. Or whether the players are almost pacing themselves, thinking, do you know what, I'm not fully at it here. I'm a bit tired. And if I go hell for leather, I've not got that 90 minutes in my tank. Who knows? But in terms of Ali Biosu, I think he's somebody who bucks that trend. He's somebody who's probably covering 14k kilometres a game. He's third, I think I'm right in saying, out of the wingers in terms of defenders, out of chances created. I think that covers fullbacks and wingbacks. But yeah, his crossing so poor. He seems to have this chip ball to the back post. That seems to be about the only thing, and it often drifts out of place. The only thing I would say with that, though, is I know that's what he's going to do. He's either going to check it back to the penalty spot or chip it to the back far post. Why is there nobody there? Because you know that's what he's going to do. I mean, there was one in the second half with Ohashi, who went down the left-hand side. He'd sort of run a bit down a blind alley. He was only ever going to be able to whip it across at best, and yet nobody gambled.
There was no one there.
And that felt like it was happening quite a bit, that people were just slightly in the wrong place. Now, we've big good Johnson up in terms of his sniffing out a chance, in terms of his positioning, gambling, keeping an eye on the ball. But I also think, to be fair to them, there's been a lack of time on the training ground, and stuff like this you can work on in game, you can work in the classroom, but it can also just come down to the fact that by the time Ali Biossu's got that far up the pitch, his legs have gone. And we all know you can play a beautiful 5-yard balls easy. You go and run and the lactic acid builds up, and all of a sudden that 5-yard ball's pretty difficult. So I think you've got to weigh.
I'm not sure I've ever got to the point where lactic acid builds up. I'm normally gone by then.
Yeah, it's not happened a while for me. But yeah, I think it's just...
Yeah, it does look like there's low energy.
Yeah.
I think I completely agree with you. I think the other thing as well is when you've got someone with the pace of Ali Biossu, his brain's got to catch up with where he is and what he's done. He's got that strength and pace, and it's going to come with experience. He's still only a young lad, and he's obviously in a new team, new league. And I don't want my expectations to be too high. And this, if there's one player on this team that doesn't deserve any negativity, it is Ali Biossu. He's been phenomenal this year. I mean, he stepped in, and I think sometimes when you've got that much strength and pace, there's a few things. One, he's got to think quicker, because he's going to be in an area of the pitch and where he's got to make that decision quicker. And the other thing, the other players have got to keep up with him. Now, yes, he's dribbling with the ball, which in theory should slow him down a little bit, and they should catch up. But I think that's where they need to kind of work on where do you want me? Ali Biossu's got to talk to them. Like, what movement do you want? Where do you want that ball? Where do you want to attack it? But also they've got to say, well, when you're in that situation, what's easier for you? Is it to whip it across? Is it to, give it a little dink across the back? What's the best thing? So it's where they need to work. But it did look very low energy and like they weren't prepped.
Yeah, and quite possibly, and maybe not through anyone's major fault, but you start playing 3 games in a week as well. I think it does have an impact. You do see performances. We've seen this forever and a day. You see that the performances drop. You see goals drop in games when this happens. And we're playing more football than most. And it's not usually that means you're doing really well in cups. Obviously, it's slightly different reasons for us.
What did you think of the goal that they scored?
I have watched it so many times now because everyone keeps telling me they think it was a foul. I don't think it was. I think there was a challenge there to be made. I thought it was poor. I thought they wanted it more. But I don't think it was a foul. Where did you stand on it?
Initially, I was pissed off because I was just generally pissed off.
Yeah.
It was one of those where I don't think it should be a foul. But I think at the time, modern football, VAR and all of this, I think it was one that could have been 50-50. I'll put it this way. When I watched it back again, I wasn't as pissed off. I was more pissed off at, like you say, our lack of desire to actually deal with it, rather than anything else. I did come away feeling a little bit different. It was a tough one. I just think that when you're seeing out a half, just see it out. You can't give these gifts away. I do understand why people were annoyed that the game should have stopped because potential head injuries, things like that. But that's football. What I was impressed was it felt like second half. Eventually, we started to get into it, but it wasn't like we came out firing, but it felt like we were starting to get opportunities, and that made me feel a little bit better. And then obviously we get the penalty and we get the goal, and then I felt like it was all us then. Yeah,
I wouldn't say we came out absolutely flying at them out the traps, but there was a noticeable increase in tempo. So that's where McLoughlin came in. He'd get the ball rather than laying it. What we have seen too often is the middle centre half lays it to the right-hand side centre half or the left-hand side. Pass it to the wing-back. He was skipping that out. If he could find Cantwell in that advanced role, he was doing it. If he could find Deneva further up the pitch, he was doing it. And that kind of thing just picked it up. When you've got somebody like Cantwell as well, all right, he's not fully match fit, but he's picking that ball up first time. He's looking to drive. He's looking to play balls quicker. You're starting to see the ball be moved quicker. That's how you break poor teams down. And I think that's what kind of led to it. Thought Baradji came on in the 80th minute, and I'll kind of skip the goal, but I thought he also was somebody who carried the ball, somebody who wanted to, at times, which I've not seen from him yet, nip in front of people. And there was one where he did a jinking run and he looked an absolute powerhouse. He just brushed people off and had an effort on goal that even the shot felt like it had more power than I've seen a shot in a while. There was just a few key people that came on the pitch and a couple of people making better decisions that moved the ball quicker. And that was the difference. It wasn't like we flew and started to press them really high or anything, but you're absolutely right. Cantwell goes and gets the penalty. And we were kind of, as much as we were huffing and puffing, I didn't feel like we were going to blow the house down, if I'm going to carry on with that Three Little Pigs analogy that has come from nowhere. So the penalty felt like the only way we were going to do it. But then after that, I genuinely did think we were going to get another. I thought we then started to attack with a bit more intent and a bit more nous, really. And that comes with having better footballers on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Baraji did well when he came on. Tavares has had a very rocky start to his career here, and we'll get into him in the next game.
Yeah.
But Baraji came on. I thought Cantwell, it was good to see him. You could see that quality. You could still see the frustration that I spoke about not long ago, where he doesn't seem to want to go forward as much as what I feel like he should. He seems like he realises it's not there and turns back a little bit. And I do understand that he's trying to be safer with the ball, but sometimes you do want that risky ball just across the back because it keeps their defenders honest. If they know that all they have to do is press you, you're going to turn back and pass. It just, the rest of the defensive unit is just going to stay there. Whereas if they know that actually I'm going to try a little dink across the back, I'm going to try and put it across the box, it might be a little bit different. So I did want to see a little bit more out of him there, but you could tell his quality. Talk to me about Ribeiro then, because this was definitely something that you was really hot on about him playing, him or Pickering. How did you feel about his performance?
Well, for a starter, I'd pick Pickering over the pair of them. I thought at wing back, he looked every inch a player who's not played football for a while. But when he moved to centre half, what him and Miller had clearly been told to get further up the pitch. That was the thing. It was a little bit gung-ho because they were going at the same time on occasions. But I just felt he provided, as much as Pratt's done a great job defensively, and he looked tired, I thought, against Oxford. He was poor at wing back. I thought he looked poor. He slowed the game down. At left centre half, he showed a bit of intent, but he still looked away off it. And that's what happens when you've played absolutely naff all football and then you're thrown into it.
Was there any other key players that, before we finish this game and go into the Portsmouth game, was there any other key players? Because I thought Marishta was okay. I thought he showed some glimpses.
I think he was the best player on the pitch, really, for me. I thought Ohashi huffed and puffed, should have scored. I thought Johnson looked tired, really, really tired. And actually, when they were sitting so deep, I would have brought Gay on. I'd have gone route one and played to his strengths and got people like Cantwell, Ohashi in and around him, Baraji even, and just looked to cause a bit of chaos, and we didn't really do that. I just would touch on Tavares. I thought Tavares looked way off it in terms of his performance because he's not played football. But when Cantwell came on the pitch and started to get into the play a bit more, all of a sudden he had somebody who he could find quicker. And as the game wore on, as much as he was holding his hamstring and looking lethargic, but from about the 60th minute until when he came off, he started to get into the game a bit more. And there is something there with him. There definitely is.
It's going to be interesting to see how his career does, because based on his performance at the Portsmouth game, which was improved, he could be a player that just needs time, and he could end up being someone that does step up. But we need players right now that are firing right now, because with all these injuries and so on, and these games coming thick and fast, you need someone that's going to be grabbing the game and making some positive moves for us going forward. And I've said I'd like to see Cantwell in that centre mid kind of role, doing something like that, because he's not someone that's going to be sprinting forward all the time. So I do feel like he could go there. But yeah, I came away from the game. I was really disappointed with the result because we should have won it. But I felt like the end of the game, I was just... I was trying to grab onto positives because I knew that this Portsmouth game was coming up and I had really high hopes for this Portsmouth game. So I was like, you know what, I'll take a point because we're going to get 3 points at Portsmouth. 4 points in the week, that's going to be fine. Do you still feel as negative as what you did on your reaction now you've watched it again?
Very deflated. I wouldn't say negative as much, just very deflated. I felt we had to get that one over the line. If you're not, I don't mean, well, it is disrespectful, sack it. If you're not beating Oxford at home, you're asking for trouble. It's now mid-December and we've not won at home for one reason or another. I was the opposite. I was thinking our away form can't carry on like this. Portsmouth hadn't scored a goal in 3, hadn't won a game in 3. I was just thinking, you can see where this is going.
Rovers doing Rovers things.
We're looking leggy. The ground's looking empty. Nothing happened in the first half. I saw people leaving and not coming back after about 50 minutes. And I'm thinking, gee. So it was bloody freezing as well because there was no one there.
To be fair, if you come to a game at Ewood Park, you don't expect the game to be going on much longer after that 50 minutes.
I did think they'd booked the taxis, yeah. But yeah, so I was sad, actually, after the game for a number of reasons. I was.
What about any 3-word reactions? Any key ones?
Yeah, a few. Blackburn Rover slept for half. I don't know if he's on about him or the team. Graham Kendall, no squad depth. And I can't use his handle or his name. No one is his surname. Kin is his middle name. Relegation this season. I was at the point where I'm not saying we're going down, but the needle's turning now. I think the warning signs are getting louder.
And obviously, we leave the Oxford game, go into the Portsmouth game. I was going into this relatively positive. I felt like I'd seen enough at the end of the Oxford game to say, okay, there's some players there that, they're willing to get forward. They're willing to try something different. How was you feeling before the Portsmouth game? Was you feeling like it was definitely the stumbling block?
I was feeling, Campbell's had some football. Baraji's had a bit more. Tavares had. I was waiting to see the starting lineup, to be fair. But Portsmouth's a tricky place to go. Interesting starting lineup, but I thought, okay, he's gone with, all right, not Baraji, but the team that started the second half, if you like, which was a better performance. It was much more front foot. So I was okay with it, and I liked what he was doing, and I thought it would depend on the first goal. And I don't know why I thought that, because we score the first goal quite often, and it makes absolutely zero difference, as I will go into later on.
I was all right with the starting lineup. I was surprised that Geneva was starting because he didn't seem to be the kind of player that Ismaël was trusting, and to actually have him on there, I was thinking that's when your injury crisis isn't is in full swing. Because as much as I called for Geneva to get some game time because I wanted to see him, I think I've seen enough to know that he's not a starter. He could potentially build into it, but I'd seen enough to know that he wasn't a starter. So I was a little bit surprised at that. And then just the lack of rotation, you just know that he's then not trusting his depth. So, but yeah, let's play the match reaction.
1 point from 2 games is just not good enough. You look at the teams that are going to be in and around it for relegation. We've not beaten one of them. And it's getting really concerning. But what I've seen today, one thing that's not new is just a lack of quality. A lack of quality from both teams. The one bit of quality was a lovely interception by Tavares, a good first-time ball out to Ohashi, who made a goal from where he was look pretty comfortable and pretty easy. But what I've seen that I haven't seen before is some real lazy play. So I've seen Geneva switch off before, but I've not seen that laziness from him. And then Baraji, you watch that corner, he doesn't pick his man up. He doesn't even show any intent to pick his man up. And why he feels the need to sort of, it's almost like he thought the ball was going to be flicked onto him and he could counter. It's just the most bizarre decision. And it's a laziness. It's an avoidance of a situation, not wanting to get your head where it hurts, not wanting to make that challenge. And if they're not up for the fight and there's a lack of quality, we are bang in trouble.
Fucking hell. I mean, Jesus. We just can't make it up at the moment. I think the thing is our squads just can't handle any kind of injuries. I mean, I get it. People have squad depth issues, but we just can't handle it at all. I think the one thing I need to look back on is both goals. I feel like Pears should have done better. I think the first goal, he probably should have come and claimed. It came very close to his 6-yard box. I think he needs to be confident there. And then the second one, letting it go out for a cheap corner. Not happy about that. But generally, you can't blame a goalkeeper for that when you're not making enough going forward. I think it was very poor. Tactically not great. Personnel not great. A lot needs to be done to improve. Okay, I forgot I swore at the start of that. Apologies. I'd had a couple of drinks.
Made me laugh.
I was so annoyed after that, like with everyone else, because the way I see it is we've talked about motivation loads. You know, who motivates who? Is it the players? Is it the fans? Is it the manager? Who should be motivating? But they did 100%. You were right. They look lazy. They look tired. They look like lack of desire. They look defeated. The one thing I did want to quickly bring up is the Ohashi celebration, because there's a lot of people that brought up the fact that no one celebrated with him. And I'll be honest, when I initially saw it, I thought it looked weird. But I've looked back and they are all celebrating on their own. I think it's one of these like glitches in the Matrix kind of thing where you'll always get, when a goal goes in, a player that just looks down, screams, pumps his fist, and doesn't necessarily run to the player. It looked like they all did that, except for Tavares. They all actually did that, and not one of them ran towards him as his celebration. So I don't think it's a team spirit thing. I think the team are together. I do think that there is. I think there's an element of people arguing with others for lack of quality. I know Gay gets a lot of pelters from the sidelines as well as on the pitch, and I know Deneva also has had that. But generally, it looks like there is some sort of team spirit there. So I wanted to get that one out of the way. But yeah, I was so angry after this game. I was just pissed off.
Yeah, a bit unusual for me on Saturday. So, reason I'd had a lovely weekend. I've spent it with my little girl. We've done Christmassy stuff. So normally I will go to the games. They're on Sky, whatever. This time I have kept up with it on SofaScore, on X, on various other things, a few WhatsApp messages, and then I've watched the highlights, watched the 15-minute highlights, and then watched the full game, knowing the score. And it's changed my watching of the game this weekend, undoubtedly, because I know what's going to happen. I actually thought they did well to ride the storm early on. But I was just looking at the lack of quality was slapping me in the face. So because I'm not necessarily watching the game in the moment as such, I'm thinking, why are we not making more of this chance? Each time everything's happening, I know something's not happening. Right, why? Poor decision-making, poor passing, slowing the game down, taking extra touches, all of this kind of thing. We're just absolutely running rife through the team. Deneva, I'll be honest, I think looks absolutely shot to bits in terms of confidence as well. And he looks to me like somebody who's hiding in plain sight. So he's trying to avoid getting into a situation where he should win the ball. So he'd rather not be there, which is no good. Just get him off the pitch if that's going to be the case. Tavares, I had some messages before I've seen the game saying, one of them even said something around, have we even paid money for this bloke? I've watched it back. I thought there was some positive signs there from him. I mean, for the goal, not many of our players can do that in terms of the reading of the game, the intercepting and the touch to get it out of your feet, and the first time ball, the waiting of it. I thought it was quality. I thought Good Johnson really lacking some energy again. He looks exhausted. Ismail talked about at the end of the game about, and I agree with him, he talked about needing the week to get players mentally right, but to get them physically right. He's not seeing the same output from people, and there's a severe lack in quality. I completely agree with him. Now we'll come on to him later and whether we agree with all what he's saying. One thing I would say, I mean, you're obviously more qualified for Pairs, so I'll leave the goals from his perspective here. I think Deneva, stand by it, lazy, didn't run back in. He had two opportunities to run back in if you watch it back. He has the first one to get back in position, but then they slow it down on the wing so the ball doesn't come in straight away. Then it is a wonderful cross from their perspective. I mean, Jacob Murphy's caused us, it is Jacob Murphy, isn't it? Not his brother. He's caused us absolute time and time again. But the ball stopped as he stands it up before he whips it in. Deneva's not far away again. He could get back in again. Now, is it a lack of instinct? Is it a lack of desire? Probably a bit of both. But by the third, fourth time this has happened, it's desire now. You've got to get back in regardless. But where's Ribeiro pulling him in? Scream at him, get him in. On the Baraji one, in my reaction, I'm talking about how bizarre it was. I have watched it back now about 20 times because I'm sad. The reason it's bizarre is they are set up to defend that corner, and Baraji and another who's completely escaping me right now are on the edge of the box, and they are picking up anyone who runs late. So Baraji's not, it looks like he should be picking him up, but he's not. So there's a cluster of 3 of their players on the penalty spot and 2 of ours. Now, this is by design. Then we've got McLoughlin about 3 or 4 yards away from them, picking one of them up. It's his man. And I think the plan is that he comes out, so he's got to run, and his job is to win the ball, and rather than picking the man up, which leaves a free man from them. So he goes to do it. Their striker blocks him off. He can't get there. They score, which is why it looks so odd for Baraji. So I hold my hands up to Baraji. The reason it looks so odd, it wasn't a lack of desire from him. He was doing his job, waiting for the man on the edge. It's actually McLoughlin who gets blocked. That must be the set piece coach. Now, we've praised him going forward, but to have a defender picking somebody up 4 or 5 yards away, I mean, back when we played football, it was get touch tight. I understand that you have zonal marking, a bit of a hybrid of zonal and man marking and things like that. But he's that far away, it's too easy to block him. So it's poor that. I think if you're doing that, and we've seen it before, and Gay's good at it, simplify their game, stick them in the area and just say, just win the ball. You can't have them also responsible for a man. So I actually put that down to the set piece coach, the second goal. I think that is the blame will lay at his door. But the game itself, I just think they deserved it. I think they showed more quality. They showed more aptitude. They showed more energy. And that worries me more than probably the Oxford game in some senses.
It goes back to something I said a few weeks ago, that I find it quite funny how footballers can make football look so hard at times. And this game, to me, I think it is just a typical game where when you're relying on the same players to play week in, week out, 2-3 times a week, it's very, very difficult. And then when they're making that trip down somewhere that, you know, it's got quite a bit of atmosphere down there. We've come off some pretty poor results ourselves, some pretty disappointing results. So whilst a draw at Ipswich and a draw at Wrexham's pretty good points generally, the way that they happened, it felt like losses. So I think the whole thing just meant that the players were kind of, that it's like they're waiting to be disappointed. So when you go a goal up, you kind of expect the fact that, you know, they should then be buoyant, but they just didn't seem to be. Going to your corner thing, fantastic breakdown of that, by the way. But I'm old-fashioned. I like to just get a few people playing zonal. I like that hybrid one. You mark their strongest players and you have others going zonal, and then you know, you just move into the ball, just get rid and reset. That could be me as a oversimplified coach rather than someone that's professional. But I just think that sometimes we overthink these things, and that was sometimes these situations. So the reason I called Pears out, and I'm probably a bit harsh on the first one, but I do. Would Tote have come out and maybe got something on that? But it seemed to drop where it dropped. I felt like the keeper may have come to claim something there. So I was a bit disappointed with that one. But the second one, it shouldn't have even been a corner. And this is what I've talked about when it comes to goalkeepers just doing the simple things right. I said before, if you get a goalkeeper making a triple save, diving around, flicking them off around the post, bringing them back into danger, saving it again, yeah, looks fantastic. We've got making a triple save. But what about the keeper that literally just came and got the cross the first time, solid, and just rolled it out to his left back and then counter-attacked? It looks boring, but it stopped all that from happening. And that's what I want. Cheap corners and giving away cheap free kicks and stuff like that really grates on me. And that was just, I mean, they let it go out. I don't know what they'd seen, but everyone knew it was a corner and it was going to go out for a corner. And they just, it's like their controller just disconnected and they forgot to go and get the ball. It really irritated me. So that's why I called on that. But yeah, to me, the whole game was just simply, it just looked tired. It looked tired. They looked lack of desire for me. I don't want to use the term lazy necessarily. I do think they look tired, but I thought Tavares did have a decent game. I don't know whether it's my expectations have gone down. I don't know whether it's just because he was the best of a bad bunch, but I thought could it be his best game that he's put in a Rovers shirt so far?
Yeah, I was trying to think that. I mean, I remember the whole game. He was involved, and he looks at his best when he's got people to play quick football around. So there was a couple of moments where he linked up really well with Cantwell or Hashi. Marishta can definitely play football in those tight areas. But it was the way he covered ground at certain times that really impressed me. It looked easy for him. I think there's a player in there. I just think we are potentially wanting him to be almost a midfield general and a leader, where I think he's probably, whether it's at this stage of his career, he's not young, but he's not, if you look at his games, he's not played 100 professional games, I don't think yet. And I think in that case, he should be alongside somebody like a Tronstad or a Forshaw. I think if you had Tronstad, him and Cantwell, I'm all right with that. And obviously we'll come on to the weekend's fixture as we go into it. But I think you'll see a better version of him then. Ironically, alongside Travis, I think he would have looked a decent player as well.
Okay, I think we need to move on now to more talking about the manager's decisions, the squad that he's got to play with. So we're going to get into a bigger conversation now. Before we leave this game, what's your 3 words reactions?
I did have them. They've just disappeared. 1 second. We have 3 word reactions coming up. Good puns. That's why I like the other ones. We had Never Again, Naive Defending, and No Squad Depth. Ties us perfectly into what we are going to talk about.
Yes. So when you have the form that we've had, which is very up and down, you're going to start questioning things. And this is what I said at the top of the show of, people are pointing fingers at owners, they're pointing fingers at the players, the manager, the coaching staff, the groundsman, the tea lady, everyone's getting fingers pointed at them right now. And I believe there is a lot of things wrong, and that's why the club is where it is. It's not just one thing, it's just not one person. So I tweeted out and I said, and I'm going to say tweet, I'm not going to say X, it's tweet. I said, I can't blame Ismaël for this, sorry, but I can't. You can't blame a chef for cooking up a shit meal when he's given spam and eggs. And then rightly, people said that he'd come out and he said the squad has improved. But for me, I said, what is he supposed to say in that situation? You know, I agree that he hasn't made the best decision at times. We've called out some of his subs, some of his tactical decisions that have been very strange. Players he's chosen not to use, and other ones that he has. You know, and there's been a lot of things that we have questioned, but I can't solely blame him for this, because I do think that he's just not been given as much help as what he needed. Now, if he had a full squad to choose from of the current playing staff, would he have got better results? I personally think so. Could a better manager do better with the current playing staff that he's dealing with the injuries? Potentially, yes. But it's a very difficult one. What's your thoughts now on Ismaël?
Really conflicted. So I think this is the first time having a Rovers manager in post for 9 months, and I can't tell you whether he's rubbish or whether he's average. I'm going to look at it different ways. So as you just mentioned something there, do I think a different manager, so John Eustace, the obvious comparison, would he be getting more of a tune out of this team? Yes, I think he would. But then I'm listening to Ismaël at the weekend, and he's talking about basically a lack of quality. People aren't good enough. We need to get them out. Now I'm questioning his judgment on a few of them. So not solely down to him, but Harry Leonard was nowhere near the squad, and he's now got 7 goals in League One. And I'm going to jump around a bit here, but before people say, well, that's League One, Ismaël's quote from the weekend about Conor O'Riordan: League One is a league where if a player is performing, you can rely on his performance, but we'll follow in the Championship. So, okay. So then makes the decision to let Harry Leonard go and keep Gay even more bizarre. Made all the more bizarre by anyone who's seen that YouTube video of Maktar Gay and Todd Cantwell openly calling him out and saying, I'll bet the lady £100 that he doesn't hit the target from the edge of the box without it bouncing, is all you need to know on the end of that subject. We've got people like Augustus Cardboard's been brought in for pace. All right, he's injured. Pretty sure he's not good enough unless something dramatic changes in him. Henriksen, not good enough yet. Sidney Tavares, not good enough yet. Forshaw's always injured. Gardner Hickman's not good enough. Deniva's not good enough. We'll go yet. Jake Garrett's still out, but reportedly training with the 21s. Christy Montgomery, not good enough yet. Lewis Miller, deemed not good enough at right back or right wing back. And he talked about needing to buy somebody for that role. So he's playing at right centre half. Well, if that is his only position we've got, not good enough. Ribeiro can't really get in the team that often. Certainly, for me, isn't better than Pickering, but he's not picking Pickering. So I'm questioning his decision-making there. McLoughlin, probably steady Eddie, but shouldn't be playing every single week. Carter's always injured. Wharton's always injured. And it's a good job we kept Pears because Torf's now injured. So there's a lot of lack of quality there. And he's talking about, again, I'll go back to his interview at the weekend, we need people who are good to go now. We can't have people getting up to speed. They didn't want to sign, all right, he's left-footed again. Liam Cooper, ironically, got injured for Sheffield Wednesday because it'd take him time to get up to speed. Well, instead, you're having to bring George Pratt back from Chorley. Pulled us out the pap and has done better than anybody can have expected. So I think there's a mixture of managerial decisions. He's picking the same team, flogging horses like Forshaw. Forshaw doesn't play any football, comes into the team, plays well. What a surprise, an experienced pro playing well in the sitting midfielder when that's where he plays. Then flogs him that much that he gets injured. That's down to the manager. Tavares doesn't play any football, expects him to perform. Ribeiro doesn't play any football, expects him to perform. This is a kind of pattern that I'm seeing a lot. And he's now talking about, oh, well, we've changed shape, so we need to go and buy players. It feels a little bit reactive. And I feel like we had an international break and he found a way of playing. He sits with Adam Owen. For those who don't know, Adam Owen's technical director, looks at the way the XG, the stats, how, are we making enough chances? How will we do that? XG-wise, whatever you want to think of it, we should be about 6th in the table. And expected goals, things like that. Oh, actually, how many chances is he missing? We're not getting masses of chances, but we're getting good chances, and we're not scoring them. But, and I'll come back to, and I make no apologies for this, you go and let your best sub-striking option go and have another one sat on the bench that you're not prepared to play and doesn't fit into your style, that is on you. Now, I'm not saying that's on Ismaël, but he is part of that transfer committee. And I think they've signed off on this. He talked at the time about there being too much transition, but it kind of was forced, whatever. Don't think that's him. He is now calling out the owners last week, and history shows us do that and you're out the door. He's now calling out the recruitment team. He's saying that we need the players in on the 1st of Jan ideally, but we know it's not going to happen. I need them by the cup game, and they need to be players that are good to go. Well, what a surprise that he needs players that are good to go in the championship and performing. He's saying we need to be ruthless, but I don't think this is going to be Deneva, Henriksen, and these players that are going out the door or going on loan. What he's talking about here is Matt Target's going out, maybe Ainsley Pears, probably Harry Pickering. These are the players they want to get rid of. And maybe even players that are they going to want to get rid of Tronstad, who's got 6 months left in the deal. So I worry that there's, he talked about there being quite a bit of churn on the Radio Likes interview and in wanting players that are good to go. Well, you mean like Dom Hyam? I just think you've all been a part of that decision making. It might not be your final decision, but he's got to take some blame for this. And the fact he's calling out Venkys, the fact he's now calling out the recruitment team, I suspect he won't be here too much longer, if I'm being perfectly honest, because history shows us that. But I think he's becoming an increasingly frustrated man. And the fact he's calling these things out now, great, because it now makes us feel like we're not all going mad. It makes us feel like that actually, unfortunately, we've been proven right. Experienced players are needed. Championship knowledge is needed. Players that you can hang your hat on to be fit and perform are needed. And we've got a severe lack of them. And that was obvious in July. We've planted ourselves in this position and we've now got until May to get ourselves out of it. And we are firmly in a relegation battle and we need to fix it quick. Is he the manager to do that, though? I'm not convinced, but at least he knows them well. And I don't know who you turn to because they're not going to go to a Eustace like Waggett did that when he knew we needed championship experience from Thomason. They are aligned in their thinking, whether we will agree with that or not. They're going to move to a similar manager to Ismaël if they move. So I actually think probably better the devil you know, but they've got to make some changes and fast.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, he is on a long contract. They obviously saw something in him that they decided to give him that longer contract than normal. I agree with everything that you've said. I don't think he's solely to blame for this whole thing. I think just changing the manager doesn't necessarily fix anything. I think it can do. I think you can get that new manager bounce. What's interesting is when I started making notes, because we've never been massive fans of him. If we're being honest, we've never been massive fans of him. We were fans of previous managers, but Ismaël was one that we just couldn't necessarily get with. And for me, the reason is when you look at a coach's role and a head coach's role, you break down what are the skills that they need. So you've got the tactical side, you've got the developing players side, the preparation for games and in training matches, the motivation, the bringing confidence in the players. When I list them, I don't know what his niche is. I don't know what his quality is, because I'm not sure he's the kind that's been putting a rocket up either, because they don't necessarily look scared of him because of the way that they're playing. They're not playing like they're scared and being motivated with a shout. I mean, we used to say it's like pats and slaps. You're either going to get patted on the back, or you're going to get slapped around the face. It was one or the other from a manager. And I'm not sure what he's actually bringing. And that's my thing, because when it comes to the signings, I'm not sure how much of a say he's actually had here. We know how arrogant that Gestede is, and these seem to be quite arrogant signings. And it's like they've played FM and thinking that that's the way you can go. Sell all your best players, Moneyball style, for as much as you can, and then you bring in some potential players and you just stick them on because they will work, because we trust the system and we can just fit them in. And it does seem like there's an arrogance there, which is why they have let the likes of Hyam go and bring in a Miller that's got to try and slot in. And like you say, now we're having to bring a young player back from loan to fill that slot. So I think there's a lot that's gone on. We can point fingers at owners and stuff like that, but ultimately, I think there's the people that have made the decisions with the signings and building the squad have made a few mistakes, and that's not slating the current squad. I think there is potential there, but the one thing we said when we broke down the transfer window was, you need players now that are ready now, and we haven't got the time or the quality to be able to survive in this league. And that's where the arrogance and the inexperience of the people making these decisions of now it's come back to bite us. Ismail saying that he said the squad had improved. I think he's got to start to say that. I don't think I know that it's been said, well, maybe he should have come out and said, this squad, it's improving if they hit their potential. I still think if you're saying that, you are basically saying, look, this squad isn't good enough now, but it might be. And I still think it's going to cause hysteria. Whether he should have said it or not, I don't know. But I think all he's tried to do is back his players. And like I said, when you start looking at the attributes of a coach, I'm not sure what he's good at.
No, I think fully agree with you, Matt. I thought when he arrived, he looked like somebody who wouldn't put his arm around players, but would maybe work on fear, and he doesn't seem to be that coach, right? He's almost quite passive. I think games happen, first halves happen. It's almost sometimes like things just happen and fall in his lap, and then let's go with it. That's what I mean. I mean, I'd said about the formation. I think Adam Owens had as much to do with that formation change, and then he doesn't feel. I don't know if he feels confident, or there's no. Do you know what? This isn't working today. I'm going to go 4 at the back and 3-4-3-3. I'm going to go 2 wide. You get wingers really high and wide. He doesn't seem to change anything tactically within a game. He just
not like Eustace. We got used to it with Eustace, didn't he? Because Eustace went through a stage where he'd bring on subs and have a plan B, and it would work. And obviously, he was a motivator as well. Yeah. But we went from Tony Mowbray that didn't seem to have a plan B, but it worked because of the levels that we was at. And then we had JDT that was just go for it and feast or famine football. Then went to Eustace where it was like, actually, we did have a plan B, and he would mix things up and they'd bring on these subs, and then it feels like we've gone back to, well, actually, it's finger in the air stuff. We're just going to kind of guess what we need and hope that it works.
Yeah, and you kind of watch the game happening, and then he'll bring players on from the bench, but not change anything, just kind of slots them in. So Pratt goes off and Ribeiro just goes in at centre half, but he doesn't seem to have the bravery to go, do you know what, this isn't working today. I'm going to whack Deneva out left, high and wide. I'm going to put Maristra high and wide on the right. The only time he's actually changed.
Everything, though, or is it a lack of football intelligence?
I do think the potential is that. I think it's like they've come up with a plan in the international break, and he's now sticking to it regardless. And it doesn't feel like it's his plan, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm going to go on to this here. So the only time he changed something was at Wrexham when he put Deneva and Henriksen out wide instead of in the sort of the 10 roles where they were, and that backfired. So maybe he's thought. But individual errors now that Rovers have had, this is where I feel a little bit sorry for him, because we might be having a very different conversation. And that's down to quality, concentration, playing too many games, things like that. But we've dropped 14 points this season from winning positions. Wrexham, Ipswich, Birmingham, Swansea, Sheffield United and Portsmouth have all come from behind to beat us. We would have been third if we'd have won on all of those. Now, all right, you're never going to do that. But, I mean, this is a bit of a false start. We've gained 5 points from losing positions. Now, a lot of those, if you look, have been late games that we've started to lose, so you're not necessarily going to have time to pull it back. But had we had Danny Bart to bring on and go 5 at the back if we were playing 4 at the back at the time, like Eustace was able to do. Had you had some of those players to bring on and see the game out, it might well have been a different story at the minute. And then I thought, well, yeah, Eustace used to do that. And then I thought back to last season. I had a look. Do you remember the Sunderland game? And there was a spell for 2 or 3 games. Adam Forshaw came on the pitch, tightened everything up. We went 5 in midfield, 4-5-1, really deep, sat there, 2 banks, and went, right, break us down. Oh, you can't. Game, nothing happened. We went away to Watford. And all right, the big difference here was we had Carter and Wharton. But he brought Pickering on at wing-back and went sensible. So he is capable of doing it. So actually, he is making poor decisions at the same time. You can't just single your players out. Now, he's not going to motivate Deneva by saying he's not good enough. He's not going to motivate. It's obvious who you're talking about when you're saying we've got to be ruthless. If we've made mistakes, we've got to get rid of them. Well, all right. Who have they signed who's not pulling any trees up and playing? I don't think he's on about Barachi because he's just not up to fitness. So he's obviously on about Henriksen. He's obviously on about Deneva. I think he's on about keeping Gaze a bad decision. Pickering around, I think he's probably on about. Is he on about Miller? And saying, we thought he was going to be a right wing back because he said we need, maybe. But we've got to be ruthless and make decisions. Well, you were pretty ruthless when you got rid of Harry Leonard. You were pretty ruthless when you got rid of Dom Hyam and you'd not had a look at Leonard. You decided Dom Hyam, actually, we can stand that. So I don't look at him and think, oh, he's a manager going to get us out of trouble. I wouldn't take him over JDT, Eustace, Mowbray. I agree with you. I couldn't tell you one outstanding attribute he's got. I don't think he's tactically adept. I don't think he's a motivator. I don't think he gets the best out of the young players. Everything you were saying before. So on that basis, he's pretty poor, isn't he? He's got the
let's defend him then. Let's defend him just a little bit. Is he currently picking, take all the injured players and so on out, is he currently picking from the worst set of players we've had in a long time?
And that is the saving grace for him. I very rarely look at the team and think, he should have done this before the game. Maybe after the game, maybe in-game, I look at certain things. Very rarely do I look at the team and go, that's a horrific decision. You can't say that very often from managers where you completely disagree with the starting 11. Very rarely do I do that. And that comes down to the main crux of the issue. The squad is shite.
And that's why I defended him on X. Now, like I said, I'd had a beer. Not going to lie. Hang on. Was it 8 in the morning? No, I'm only joking. So I defended him a little bit because I was looking and I was thinking, okay, let's put it into football manager terms. If you was picking from that squad, you'd be pretty pissed off. And whether he's had a say in the signings or not, he's been given the ingredients and he's been told he's got to cook up a 5-star Michelin star meal out of some bog standard food, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I don't want to slate the players. I like them all as individuals. Yeah. I think they've all got a lot of potential. But like we've said about mixing youth and experience, the squads always used to have 1 or 2 players where you looked at them and go, they are proper championship players. Then you would have 1 or 2 that were really good youth players that you just know they're going to be destined to bigger and better things than Blackburn Rovers, and you're going to cash in. And then you have a mixed bag of other players that were filler. Some would frustrate you. Some you'd say, do you know what? They're mid to low championship players, but you need them. Right now, when I look at that squad, I'm excited about Good Johnson. I think he could. I think he's got some qualities. I think there's others there like Ali Biasu, but generally, I just think that he's not got much to pick from, and that's why he's come up with the comments today saying, "Oh yes, we've spoken already with the board because the longer we wait, the more problems we will get." Exactly what you just said. So he knows that he needs the players, and at the start of the season, he was trying to back them, he was trying to build them, and now I think he's in self-preservation mode, and he's now trying to let everyone know this isn't me. Look what I've been given, and look what I'm having to deal with. And I think there's an element of that as well, and that's why I'm saying I don't necessarily blame him. And if he fully came out and he's just said, "Look, I've been given absolute shit here to deal with," I'd kind of get it because I think he is going to implode at some point.
I think we're starting to see it now. His defence, he will point to people to say what they want. The only stat we care about is the league table. But when you're a manager, you can't do that final bit for the players. You can only give them a structure. You can only give them a basis and knowledge. They have created big chances to the point where they should be, by the metric that football uses, 6th in the league table. He is not Yuki Ohashi in the box, missing that header. He's not Ali Biosu pinging it and it goes too far over every player. He's not Ohashi dribbling past 4 players and making a poor decision. He isn't doing those things, but he is giving them the structure. He is giving them the basis. He's giving them the knowledge. So I am very conflicted about him. And I also think while you look at this squad, we're not having a pop at the players individually as such, because I think you're right. I think there's a number of those players that are just not ready yet, and we're asking too much too soon of them. It's not that I'm writing them off. But then I look at the weekend, we're playing Millwall, massively tough game, tough championship game, full of horrible, horrible individuals. And we could be facing it with a back 6, if you include Ainsley Pears, of Pears, Deneva, Ribeiro, McLoughlin, Miller, and what? Gardner Hickman at right wing back, Maristra at right wing back. That's as poor as it gets. We're desperate for Ryan Hedges to come back. And it's not because Ryan Hedges is doing something this season that he's never done before. It's because he's one of the most steady Eddies that we've got. And we should have been looking to improve on him. And we've just give ourselves too big a gamble, and we knew it. And they've got to try and rectify it in January. And it will be very, very interesting who comes through the door. I mean, I think Conor O'Riordan's definitely going to come back, and I think he'll play a lot of football. But he's another young player. But he's played a lot more football than Tavares, than Miller in terms of English football, Ali Biosu, Deneva. And that's madness that he's more experienced than all of them in English football.
And you rightly bring up about him not being the one on the pitch, because I'm literally just looking at some of the stats now, and our XG, and I hate XG because I still think it's a flawed stat. But like at Oxford, it was 2.34 versus their 0.35. You know, I think there is an element of that. You know, I want to point the finger at one thing and just say, right, that needs to change. I mean, obviously, we could just completely say, well, it's the owners, get rid of the owners, because then they'll sort everything out beneath them and it'll be a full restructure. I get that. But let's be honest, these owners aren't going anywhere, so it's okay. If the owners stay, what is it? And I think that there is an element of the decision makers in the signings is what's now caused this. And that's why I just can't blame Ismaël on his own. I think there are some really weird decisions, like you say. I think that if I saw him trying to do something different, if I saw him trying to tactically change things, personnel, just trying to mix something up, you know, like Big Sam used to do, just sticking Chris Amber up front, you know, at least you're seeing something. At least you're seeing the fact, do you know what? He's trying to win this game, rather than the definition of insanity is to try the same thing over and over and expect a different result. But I do feel sorry for him to an extent, but I do think he has got quite a bit of blame himself.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much in the same boat. I think we're kind of all in on this project now, and we'll see how much arrogance there is. Are they going to admit they've got it wrong and go and rectify it, or are they going to double down on it? If they double down on it, I think that's when we'll know if we're in a relegation dogfight. I think right now we are on the brink of a relegation fight.
Well, what's interesting is we're 12th in the XG table.
Right, so we've dropped in that as well. But yeah, in expected points wise, we are about, I think we were 6th before weekend's game when I looked. So that's based on you defending and things. So that's saying you should be saving, you should be keeping the ball out of the net at a certain rate, and these are the goals you should be scoring. So in terms
we were sorry to interrupt you. We were 6th before the Portsmouth game. That was what dragged us down. Right. That one game.
Yeah. And it's around, and that is what the club will look at in terms of, are we doing the right things? Are we moving the ball right? Is our structure right? And that's what they really looked at during the international break. Well, without Campbell, we're struggling to create chances. He was creating so many. Without him, they were creating naff all. So they tried to build a team structure that could cope without him. They've now done that. They're clearly going to stick with that. And it's working to some extent. They've got to find someone to get the ball in the net. Maybe a young English striker who could get 7 goals already this season. They could go and pick up from League One or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, I made a list, didn't I, of the things that we'd said that had come true. That was one of them. Yeah. Harry Leonard was one that we just shouldn't have let go. I could understand a loan. I could get that. It's so frustrating because I was a massive fan of Leonard back when he played. So the West Brom game where he got his couple of goals, I remember breaking down how he pressed, his movement, his positioning and everything. It was all there, very similar to Good Johnson, just without the size. And it's so frustrating because I feel like we just gave him away, and it's very, very frustrating. This is going to be a huge window for us. I'm not too sure on squad spots or anything like that. But I do think there's going to be players leaving. I think Gay is obviously one of them. I think there's going to be players leaving and there's going to be players coming in. My concern is that we're going to be taking some risky signings again, and we need to just get 1 or 2 solid signings, people that have championship experience. If we're still dipping into some European B leagues for players and expecting them to come in and just be physical and try and run the arse off players, I just don't think it's going to work. We need a Danny Bart signing, we need a Vyman signing, and what a fall from grace for a squad that is what we're hoping for.
Yeah, but it's much needed. And they've got to find a way to keep the other players fit, because we cannot, albeit they were talking at the weekend that we've got 24 players registered, we cannot cope with the drop-off in quality for a sustained period of time. And now we've got the Sheffield Wednesday game to fit in. And that's one other thing I just wanted to mention. Have you seen that they've put the Sheffield Wednesday game into February? Now, if they get new owners and they go on a spending spree, all right, that's a lot of ifs, but are they going to reinforce in January? Quite positively. All right, well, we'll give them time to bed in. What was or should have been a walkover might no longer be a walkover. I'm not saying they're going to survive, but again, that could bite us really, really bad. That's that game.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be a walkover. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's Rovers. We'll go and beat top of the league and then go and lose to bottom. That's what we do. I said last week, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards, and that's what we're doing right now. Whenever you've got a player like a Ben Brereton or Adam Armstrong, a Ben Brereton and a Smodics, you've got to build around them. You can't keep selling them and expecting to pull rabbits out of hats. And I think we've run out of rabbits now. And now it's getting to the point where the owners need to dig deep. And we can talk about the fact that they haven't looked after Ewood, they haven't looked after the training ground, stuff like that. But unless you look after the squad as well, you're just going to be sinking. And I don't want us to go down to League One again. People are saying, I'd take relegation to get rid of the owners. Well, we got relegated once and didn't get rid of them. So I'm not sure that, it's not going to happen. So now, from a football point of view, I just want us to have some success on the pitch again. We had a lovely run of form and we was all bouncing. And the main issue we had was our run of form was it was similar to other people's around us. So they all bounced up with us, but we've dropped and they're still bouncing up, and that's the issue. It's a massive January, but yeah, let's cross fingers. But before we go, Mark, was there anything else you want to talk about before we finish?
Not particularly. I think we are. We're in a bit of a mess right now. We're in a bit of a malaise. We're in a bit of a tricky period. But all is not lost. We have a young squad here, and we talked tonight around Tavares showing some real signs of recovery. We talked about George Pratt coming back in and being really promising. Marista, I think, is getting better. Johnson looked tired, but we know that there's some quality there. Alibiosu, been really impressive. So yes, there's some negatives. Yes, there's some fixes. But put Hayden Carter and Scott Wharton in that team, it makes a difference as well. Tronstad's back on the pitch. You get Hedges back there. You had one or two in January, the right additions. Campbell's coming back into it now. Baraji's looking fitter. And I think there's the base of a squad there. I don't think it needs a massive overhaul. It just needs some big players bringing in, some players who can get in that first team regularly, are robust, and will do a job that you can hang your hat on. Maybe even another Ryan Hedges type character somewhere along that back line that you can say, do you know what? He's a 7 out of 10. He will do. Even another McLoughlin type player that you can just say, we'll probably look to improve on him at some point, but we can hang our hat on him every week and he'll be fit. It's not always not lost, but it's a massive window. Possibly the biggest window we've had for a number of years, in a very different way. You know, we talked about windows a couple of times. Can we kick on? Can we get in the playoffs? I think this one, we could look back on it in a few years, and if they get this window wrong, it could set us back a long, long way.
100% agree, because we don't seem to have any young players that they're trusting coming through. The players that we're relying on don't seem to be players that you can rely on. And yeah, I think it's going to be big. I mean, our next batch of fixtures, obviously over the Christmas and New Year period, which are all thick and fast. Millwall at home, Middlesbrough away, Sheffield Wednesday away, Wrexham at home, Charlton at home, and then it's I believe it's the international break then. And no, is that the FA Cup weekend then?
FA Cup weekend, yeah.
Yeah, so then that's the FA Cup weekend.
For those who didn't know, because that's the game that everyone wants to watch in the FA Cup.
Well, I just hope that this batch of results we get some positivity, and then we can get one or two players in quite early and get some injuries back, injured players back. But yeah, so it's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, we've obviously been talking for an hour and 20. It seems negative. Try not to be. Football's supposed to be a positive experience. It's an entertainment. That's why we watch it. And as they say, are you not entertained? To be honest, right now, no, I'm not. But put your comments down below. What's your thoughts on Ismaël? Where do you think the blame lies? Is it one person? Is it multiple? What do you think the results are going to be coming up? Is it relegation? Is it a nice push to playoffs like we had last year? Not sure about that one. But Mark, thanks for joining me.
No worries, Mike. Thank you very much.
And everyone, have a great week, and we'll see you next time.